So Bob, Automobile Magazine named you its very first Man of the Year in 1990 for your contributions to the Mazda Miata. You know, at the time, everyone was talking about small front-wheel drive sporty cars. Why did you think there was room for a small sporty rear-wheel drive car?
Well, I mean, there's really only two kinds of cars. There's RWD, right-wheel drive, and WWD, wrong-wheel drive, which is everything else, including four-wheel drive. With the whole idea of the car was, I mean, this sounds dopey. When we were working on it, we knew we had a glass ceiling because we had basically the RX-7. And the last thing in the world we wanted to do was cannibalize our own car. So the two things we decided from our side with the initial proposal was it wasn't going to be rotary and it wasn't going to be anything but rear drive. Just the rear drive gave us a link to the RX-7, but it didn't, have us have to reinvent the wheel. Between the time we started on the project and before the launch, Honda launched the CRX and Toyota had the MR2. In the Miata project, we had a stage where they had a thing called offline go. And it was offline 55, but 5 in Japanese is go. And it was for vehicles that aren't currently in the system. And Japan decided, okay, we'll let you do your little sports car project because the guys in Hiroshima and the guys in the Tokyo office, which was brand new, they wanted to do sports car projects too. So we proposed one, and then Tokyo had one, and Hiroshima had another. And I can't remember who did which, but ours was, of course, front-engine rear drive. The Tokyo car, I think, was the mid-engine one, and the Hiroshima car was front-engine front drive. Philosophically, if you think notchback CRX, you wouldn't be too far off with the front driver. The mid-engine car was very, very close dimensionally to first-generation MR2. I mean, like within millimeters, but looked a little better, and ours was ours. So they had a sketch program, and I didn't go to the sketch program review, but Mark did. And Jordi and Masao Yagi, who was the other guy that worked on the first generation, first concept, they're there, and in the sketch program, we went down in flames. Okay, basically they just said, not so good. The purpose of this was they didn't want to build 3 full-scale clay models. They wanted to build 2. They wanted to kind of work it down. The guy who was in charge of the project at that time, which was this unofficial thing, a guy named Masakatsu Kato, he felt sorry for Mark and for Yagi and for the US organization, so he let us stay in and do the full-scale clay. So we did the full-scale clay, not knowing we were there, and they had pretty much decided, we're not going to pick the California one. It's between these two. And they do the presentation, and our car was last. Now, we had built the clay model as a see-through clay, but what we didn't tell anybody was the roof could be removed, which is, of course, what it was supposed to be. And in the presentation, and they say, oh, and by the way, this is what the car is supposed to look like. And 2 people came and lifted the roof off. And the guy in charge of the Tokyo car stood up and said, build that one. But from that point on, everybody jumped onto the bandwagon of front-engine rear drive. And it just made the most sense.
Simple, as you say, in a lot of ways, it looked exactly right.
I then had to spend, and I had been working, I started on the project officially, it must have been about, it was the second week of January in 1982, because I had been hired by Mazda, and Mr. Yamamoto came to visit, and I didn't know. And I'm sitting at my desk. I'm actually working on B-Series pickup truck. And I'm working here, and there's this, here's Yamamoto-san. Hey, Bob-san, what are you doing? I'm working on B-Series. Why aren't you working on your cheap sports car idea? And I was like, I couldn't even remember it, because I had talked to him about it in 1978. Here's 1982. But I said, well, I got to work on this. So I'll talk to your boss. So he went and talked to my boss, Mr. Yamamoto, no relation, another Yamamoto. And they had to talk about other things relating to, because at this time, Yamamoto, Kenichi, became president of Mazda, was the head of all R&D, all development. And my boss came back and said, oh, Yamamoto-san says you can work on your light sports car idea, but you have to do it in a certain time because we have other work to do. So you can do it as much as you want before 8:30 in the morning, and you can do it between 12 and 1, and you can do it after 5:30. I was like, okay. So I did. I came in at 6 o'clock in the morning and worked in the car till 8:30. I worked on it during lunch. And just any time anybody came from Japan, I kept, we got to do this. We got to do this. This is such a great idea. And it got to the point that a guy named Shigenori Fukuda from design, who came over for a couple of projects, told Mr. Yagi, I got to get away from Bob. I can't stand hearing about this lightweight sports. He came back as my boss. And Fukuda-san was great. because he caught the bug, I guess, and he became another one of the carriers, you know. And the idea was just to infect as many people at Mazda with the concept as we could. And I guess it worked.
A great conversation. It's interesting to know that it all started with a conversation in 1978. It took a little time to develop.
Just a little bit, yeah.
So here it is, 25 years later, almost 1 million cars with the Miata nameplate in circulation. Why is this car still popular?
I like to think, and I'm probably wrong, this is maybe just my rationalizing things myself. I like to think because the whole car was conceived and developed with something that's very, very uncommon in the car industry, common sense. It was kept simple. The customer, you could look at the concept and understand it. Okay, there was no interpretation involved. The idea was to make something that everybody would understand. Not everybody's going to like it, okay? If you're a horsepower whore, it's a piece of junk. It's a woman's car. You know, I've heard all of them. But it's a car that's not about going as fast as you can in a straight line. It's about the most miles per gallon you can get going around a corner, okay? And it's a completely different process to approach. And it's, in some respects, you either get it or you don't. And if you don't get it, you never will. But if you do get it, doesn't mean you run out and buy it. But hey, yeah, I'd get it. I think it was simple. Okay, there was no bullshit about it. It was just straightforward and what it had to be. Nothing really more than it had to be, but nothing less than it had to be. The other idea we had with the car was, we figured, you know, and a very hard thing to learn is that the final designer of any car is the buyer. Okay, so I'd see guys at Miata events who'd put wings on cars, and I don't like wings, but it's nice. Yeah. But it's his car. He can do whatever he wants with it, right? We thought, in a way, it's got to be kind of like a blank canvas that gets people interested in doing that. So it's not just an appliance.
Bob, thanks for speaking with us today. There's no one who understands the Miata like you do. As you say,
Well, that's
it's something you've spent most of your life developing or explaining.
Well, enjoying it. Every time I see one drive by with somebody smiling, that's okay. Makes me feel good.
Excellent.